So, in an unprecedented meeting with hundreds of the United States military top generals and admirals, Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump delivered some pretty incredible speeches that we need to talk about today because the nature of authoritarianism begins with the military. And it does appear as though they are trying to change the military to become more compliant and loyal with the administration than the actual Constitution. You just can't make this stuff up, guys. It is dangerous and perilous times. Let's get into it. So as we all know, Pete Hegseth last week announced that there was going to be a meeting with all one-star brigadier generals and above and all of their staff at a meeting at the Marine base in Quantico. Now, with that being said, that is in and of itself just goes to show how incompetent Pete Hegseth is, because you do not put all of your top brass in the same location at the same time with the Secretary of Defense, with the President of the United States. This is a major, major security issue, but he did it anyway. Now, fortunately for our military, nothing bad happened. We didn't get a nuclear bomb dropped on the heads of all of them from Russia or China, taking out the entire administration and decapitating the United States military and leadership. However, Pete Hegseth went into a diatribe on wokeism in the military. Again, if you don't even know what woke means, please stop using the word. Woke is a euphemism for the African American community, that they have awoken, that they have waken up to what is happening to them in this country. It has nothing to do with gay rights, LGBTQ, any of that type of stuff. That has all been taken over by those other groups and basically stolen from the African American community. Now, what DEI is different. That is basically encouraging diversity and equity and inclusion for all of our government and military. Because the United States is made up of a melting pot, right? We have Latinos, we have blacks, we have whites, we have Asians, we have South Asians, we have everything. Native Americans, of course. We have all of that in one melting pot in the United States. And so if you just have one ethnicity ruling over everybody else, you will end up in a civil war. There is no doubt about it. The United States literally went to a revolutionary war over a 2% tax on a beverage called tea. So if you think that all of the non-white, non-Christian nationalist Zionists are going to just sit back and allow this to continue to happen, you would be mistaken, because this is how dictatorships work and this is how dictatorships fall. We have learned absolutely nothing from Syria and other dictatorships around the country that have usurped power for themselves and their cronies, and it has fallen into absolute chaos. That is what the United States will become. Now, you could sit there and say, well, look at Russia. Russia hasn't ended up that way. Putin's been in power forever, and he's not in threat of losing his power. Well, that's because Russia is predominantly made up of one ethnicity. Now, when you get down into the Caucasus, they have their own thing going. Putin leaves them alone. They're basically administrative provinces of Russia, but Russia lets them do their own thing, like in Chechnya and Azerbaijan, or not Azerbaijan, but Chechnya and all of the Caucasus regions around them, like Dagestan, for example. They get to run their own areas. They're left alone. But that's not what's happening in the United States. Donald Trump and his cronies want to beat down everybody that is not loyal to them and looks like them and sounds like them. And this meeting with the military was a loyalty oath, bar none. You can twist it and spin it any way you want. Warrior ethos and all that garbage. But I'm telling you right now, from a draft dodger and Donald Trump to a guy who was a failed National Guardsman and Fox host, neither one of them know anything about warrior ethos. Of course, Hegseth went into this diatribe about wokeism in the military and how they're going to get rid of that. He put forth a loyalty test, issued a thinly veiled threat to any dissenting general. If the words that you hear today make your heart sink, then you should do the honorable thing and resign. This ultimatum demands total philosophical alignment with the administration, a shocking demand for a politically neutral military. And we'll get into something that is really, really disturbing here in a minute when we get to Trump. He did say that the military needs to return to toughness. Now, this is one thing I will give him credit for. The U.S. military's standards of physical fitness have gone way down. And it just doesn't make sense that you would have anybody in the military who is not physically fit. However, when you're talking about generals, a lot of these dudes are 50, 60 years old plus. They're not going to be able to do what a 25-year-old can do. So he's saying that everybody must meet the same standard or they've got to go, which means a lot of your older, more experienced generals who are nonpartisan, are going to end up getting removed out of the military because they're going to have to meet these standards twice a year. And I guarantee you these older fellas are not going to be able to make it. And the women are not going to be able to make it. So you're going to see a mass exodus of females from the U.S. military. And listen, let's be 100% honest. Pete Hegseth himself has said that women have no place in the military. So he's now doing everything that he can to make sure. One of those things is that everybody in the military now has to reach the top standard of the male fitness tests, which means there will be no secondary tests anymore for females, which means 90+% of the women are not going to be able to meet the standards and they're going to be run out of the military. Now, it's already hard enough for the military to get recruits as it is. This is only going to make it worse, and we will have a major shortfall in our military quite quickly if this is implemented. Now, let's get to Donald Trump here because this is absolutely crazy. First of all, he goes an hour long in his address. As usual, he loves the sound of his voice, but he wanted to talk about domestic politics and domestic military use more than anything else. He started by addressing the room's silence. Now, if you don't know, in the military, there's a tradition with the generals and the brass. When a president comes into the room, you don't get up, you don't clap, you don't cheer, you don't scream like, little 13-year-old girls at a Taylor Swift concert. You sit there quietly, dignified, because you are nonpartisan. Nonpartisan. It means you don't care if he's a Democrat, you don't care if he's a Republican, because you're there to support the Constitution. Presidents change, or at least they're supposed to. So the military has always had this nonpartisan role in the government. But Donald Trump didn't like that. He didn't like that one bit. And so he basically told them that if they did not start clapping and applauding for him, they can get up and leave. But if they get up and leave, there goes their rank, there goes their future, gone.
I've never walked into a room so silent before. This is very... Don't laugh. You're not allowed to do that. You know what? Just have a good time. And if you want to applaud, you applaud. And if you want to do anything you want, you can do anything you want. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank, there goes your future. But you just feel nice and loose, okay? Because we're all on the same team.
So a not so thinly veiled threat against the United States military and generals, making them break from a long tradition of remaining silent and quiet and dignified and not acting like a bunch of teenage girls over whoever the president is. But most alarming, he continued to push for the military to be deployed in American cities, particularly saying that the military should be deployed in Democrat-run cities to be used as testing grounds for warfare, training grounds, doing active military training, practicing against American citizens in Democratic-run cities. This is authoritarianism. What more evidence do you need? He's literally addressing the world's, America's top brass and telling them that they need to go into Democratic cities and run military drills in them. Not Republican cities, Democrat cities. And I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I think both parties are the same side of the same coin, or two different sides of the same coin. But I got to tell you, this is scary. This is some scary, scary stuff. I don't recognize the American government that I grew up with anymore. This is not the America I grew up with. We have never been perfect. We've had racism. We've had race riots. We've had KKK and Nazis and skinheads and all of this stuff. And we've had Black Panthers and Black Power and Mexican pride and all. We've had a lot of differences. But at the end of the day, you always had a president, whether it was a Republican or a Democrat, who would always try to calm down the rhetoric on both sides. Because again, the Republicans and Democrats were the same side, or two different sides of the same coin. But now we have a president who is full on telling his supporters, you don't have to vote again after me. And now he's basically setting everything up to where he doesn't leave the office. Gavin Newsom, a guy I don't like or trust at all, came out and said, you don't spend $200 million on a ballroom if you intend to leave. And I got to say, I agree with him. It just makes a lot of sense, guys. Now listen, here's the dictator's playbook. Mass mobilization and loyalty pledge, forcing all the commanders to attend in person and publicly swear allegiance to the new ideology. This happened in 1930s with a guy named Adolf Hitler. Now, purging dissent. Hegseth's open threat, along with Donald Trump's, of firing those who don't agree with the new compass heading. Same thing with Trump saying, if you don't applaud for me, get out, but your career is over. Redefining the enemy. Trump's rhetoric that frames domestic political opponents as the enemy within, as domestic terrorists for simply protesting, which is a part of the Second Amendment of the United States. It is foundational to this country that we have the right to speak to power because they work for us. We don't work for them. We pay taxes so that pays their paychecks. And this is where we're at, guys. Now, I know this may be a little bit more hyped up than my normal videos, but listen, we are in perilous times right now. And perilous times demand unity, number one. I don't care if you're right or left. If you are against having an authoritarian dictator take over this country, you should combine together. You should work together. I don't care if it's Aaron Parnas or Nick Fuentes. We should all work together to stop this atrocity of what is happening to our country right now. Knowledge is power. Please follow us for more. Share this to everybody. And please check us out on our Substack because they can cancel us here, but they can't cancel us over on Substack. Till next time, I'll see you guys. Stay safe out there. Stay united.